In the underground bunker, below the threat of civilizations and zombies, a band of scientists and military fight for survival in Day of the Dead.
Mafia, wake up, wake up, wake up.
You have created a monster and it will destroy you.
Hello.
Welcome back, bub.
Hello.
Welcome back to the Monsters vs. Men podcast, the bargain basement of the monster podcasting airwaves, where two friends try to stay alive by chatting about weekly monster movies. This week, we are discussing Day of the Dead. With me is none other than my living zombie friend, Alex.
And joined by my one-armed companion, Eric.
Oh, man. Yeah. He could have lived, that guy.
Yeah,
that guy was crazy.
That
guy was insane.
That was something.
He's something. I'll tell you.
Yeah. Eric, after this film, I can't wait for Romero's cap off to this trilogy, his quadrilogy, and that is Evening of the Dead.
Ooh, Evening. I've heard great things about Evening.
Yeah, it's actually a rom-com, which kind of feels.
Oh, is it?
Yeah,
that's a little different. Yeah. Yeah. Evening of the Dead, Twilight of the Dead, Noon of the Dead. I'm looking forward to all of those.
I can't wait either. Yeah.
But Alex, I think we'll end up having a decent discussion about this one. So let's go ahead and jump on in, shall we?
Yes, shall we?
Although George Romero will continue to direct more and more zombie films, like we just mentioned, after 1985's Day of the Dead marks the end of what is considered Romero's finest trilogy, Night, Dawn, and Day. To start this conversation off, Alex, I wonder how you see these films as a trilogy playing off one another, and how you think Day caps off this specific trilogy.
Yeah, I think this film somehow caps off the trilogy perfectly. I haven't been shy about how I'm not quite big on Night of the Living Dead. Dawn of the Dead really grew on me during our conversation. Really ended up enjoying that movie and looking back on it fondly. And now this has been the perfect capper for the trilogy. But it's not because it's a perfect film. And it's far from it. But what I appreciate is how unique the film is and how unique it makes this trilogy. With all three of these elements together, this is a wild trilogy. Yes, there's zombies in all three, but they are such incredibly different movies. I mean, I have to give a lot of props to George Romero. I almost said George R.R. Martin. Because different George. So I just really appreciate it. And this is a very satirical movie in many ways, from subject matter to characters to even the zombies. Every corner of this film is over the top without mostly overdoing it. There are some overdone elements, which I'm sure we'll both get to. But I think this one actually does horror pretty well. It definitely shocked me more than the other two films. Even though, the first 15 of Dawn may be an exception. But it definitely shocked me in some pretty interesting ways. And despite some, I have to say it, goofy zombie logic at the end of the film, I enjoyed this one. For sure. I want to know what you thought, because you were a big fan of Dawn. I want to know what
I love Dawn.
What Day did for you.
I love Dawn. You're right about the horror elements. Like, one of the unique aspects of this film are kind of the dream terror sequences that we get that we haven't gotten in the other ones. But
dude,
I will
that first
start
one,
this conversation.
That first one is it's perfect.
Yeah. I think the Dead trilogy ties together in three distinct ways. First, you've got how they tie together tonally. Each film has a distinct satirical bite to them that feels uniquely Romero-esque. They're over the top in their performances, but always try to find this line between camp and more dramatically serious content, which leads to the second way they're tied together thematically. We get critiques of all aspects of society in these films. Each one, though, feels specifically American too, I would add, in that they highlight some of the more absurd aspects of our specific society, which leads to three, the characters. We get diverse characters who, though flawed, become very likable throughout. Day of the Dead fits into all three of these categories. Now, it's probably my least favorite of the three for a couple reasons that we'll get into, but I do think it fits right into the mold of this trilogy. And what's great, like you mentioned, Alex, about this trilogy, what's really so impressive is how, despite these commonalities, each film is a one-of-a-kind zombie story, and each one has its own flavor.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're right on there. As I reflect on this trilogy, what impresses me about Romero is how he just apparently feels zero need to double dip on his films, despite them all containing zombies. It feels like it'd be so easy to be one note and just kind of iterate. But instead, he, maybe too strong of a word, but it's the only one coming to mind, he revolutionizes with each movie. He just does something completely different. And man, I just think it's so cool. You know, I was on the verge of calling this man maybe a little overrated early on, but the more I see of him, the more I am impressed by him. And I was really dismissive of a future movie we might skip, but now I'm wondering if maybe we should watch Land of the Dead. It was actually the only Romero movie I have seen before we started this series. And I'm a little iffy on it, but I wonder if I'll come away from it very differently now that I've seen these. Because from what I remember, it is a very different film from this one, which is interesting. I just kind of want to see more of his stuff now.
Well, yeah, I know. So he's got Night of the Living Dead remake, 1990, right? And then Land of the Dead, and I'm sure we're missing a couple in there, right? But yeah, I'm interested as well, because it is very interesting that we get somebody that keeps going back to zombies,
right?
Like, I'm just gonna make movies about zombies, but every zombie film I make is going to be distinct, right?
Yes.
It's going to be something that you mentioned the word revolutionary, and that might be over the top for films, and for zombie films, but for zombie films themselves, I mean, yeah, this guy does that, right? Like, he is changing the game of how we think about zombies 3 different times, right?
Yeah.
3 different times he's done that, and has had such an influence on how we think about zombies in today's culture, right? But before I get into some critiques, I do want to be clear. I'm grotesquely entertained by Day of the Dead, but that's also where my criticism might come in a bit. Day of the Dead is certainly entertaining, more purely entertaining than Night of the Living Dead, but I think it does go a bit too far, in that it loses a piece of that satirical thematic bite that we mentioned before. It's still there, it's still present, but it's less effective because the performances at times can be too over the top. The characters at times can be too larger than life. So when we try to get serious, when anyone tries to get serious, it just doesn't quite mesh. The tone management is off in some crucial ways. And I know I'm going to sound like David Marshall again, I think.
Here we go.
But the violence is the primary focus of this film. really, this is like, if you take a look at the three films and what they each bring, this film brings the special effects into focus. And for some, that's going to be the highlight of the film and will make this film one of the greatest zombie films of all time because the effects are insane and they leave me asking, how the heck? But I don't think the violence provides as much impact as it does spectacle. The film succeeds in making us delight in the violence, especially in those final moments of the military's demise. But I don't know if that's the best aim for any kind of film, really.
Oh, interesting. I actually think it's totally fine. I actually kind of like how horrifying it is here. It I would say it is out of place, except for some of the things that our good doctor has been doing during the behind the scenes. Because while some of those moments are really funny, they are also completely disgusting. like when he has that first dead body that we see, that is from the one of the soldiers that had been buried, in quotes, but then he's left intact, like the spine and like the base of the brain. Yeah. And he's like just playing with it, and it's like pulsating, and it's like just the face is just, the head is just gone, except for that. It is so gross, but it's also funny. And I really like that. And that is kind of different from what we get later on with our violence, because it's not funny and it's just kind of grotesque. And it's really just Romero showing off his special effects chops.
It really is.
Because some of it's pretty impressive, I will say.
Oh my gosh, dude. Some of it is insane.
It really is. And I don't have a huge problem with it, but I would agree with you that maybe it is a little out of place at the end compared to what we've seen. And I think, like you said, our larger than life characters are really bothersome for me. But I think it's Bub and Steele in particular, if I remember right. Is Bub one of the goofy soldiers?
No.
Steele is.
Bub is the zombie.
Oh, right.
Bub is
I love Bub.
Steele is the over.
Still, is it Rickles? Is his buddy Steele and Rickles, right?
Maybe, Rickles.
I think Rickles sounds right. But they're too over the top. They don't fit in this film. They belong with Bill Paxton in Aliens somewhere else. Just over hamming it up. Like one of them.
Yeah, they're like the expendable characters. You think they're going to be expendable, but they're not expendable until like the last 5 minutes of the movie.
Yeah, I know. They stick around a little.
They just stick around too long.
Yeah, unlike Bill Paxton was killed pretty quickly. These two, they stay on to the end. One of them even laughs until he's being ripped into pieces, which is it's too much. Again, this is one of those times where Romero misses the mark with his whatever he's trying to say. I'm not even sure, but he just kind of overdoes like his comedy at times during the wrong moment. This kind of goes back to the arm and the heart rate thing in Day of the Dead or Dawn of the Dead. It kind of goes back to that, where it's like, dude, you're kind of losing me. You're taking me out of this moment that's supposed to be horrifying. And I'm like, I just can't connect in any way, shape, or form with this character because he is so unreal. There's no one that would be like that. Yeah. Not really. But that being said, I do enjoy the finale here, even if the zombies are too fast. Like, a bunch of them come in, but they are on top of everybody, despite them being much faster. It's a little too much. It's kind of that Halloween logic. Like, how does Michael Myers walk faster than any human can run? It's just it's a little too much. They're getting ambushed at every turn by these things. But it's okay. It's played up for laughs. Like, all the zombies that come down are dressed goofily. Which is really pretty funny. Like, there's one in particular that's like dressed like a band geek, and that's like a marching band. Yeah. It's pretty funny. Yeah. Pretty funny. And I have to say, though, despite some of my gripes with this film, it is unlike most movies that I've seen. And I do have to say that the other thing that I really like here are the characters overall. While I do have gripes with our overacted characters, I like our I do like our military. I mean, I don't like him, but I like I like the character. I like Rhodes. This person who's drunk on power because they've just been thrust into a leadership position that they really probably didn't earn. I love that he is just power hungry. He just loves to control people.
Yeah,
and then I also like Sarah, our main character. But really, the highlight for me is a character that I thought was going to maybe be a bad guy or something early on in the film, John. Mm-hmm. John, I think, is McDermott his buddy? Golly, I can't remember their names.
Yeah, John McDermott his buddy.
John and McDermott? Dude, that's a duo that I absolutely really enjoyed. They're just so interesting and like almost out of place. But I like that they've created their own little nook, their own little place in this world where they have like their little beach scenery and their own place that they live together. And very interesting. And Eric, I don't know if you agree, but it felt like to me that the film was alluding to them maybe being a couple. Did you pick up on that, or was that not something that was present?
No. I did not pick up.
I didn't know if they were or if they were just like the best of friends.
Yeah, there's definitely a relationship there, right?
Because Eric, we would know. There's a very fine line. Friends or a couple?
I mean, I think in this case, here's why. Here's why I think they're friends, right? And why there is this underlying like deeper relationship, which actually I think there's another aspect. So when we talk about the characters of Romero's films, really what makes them interesting are their relationships with each other.
Yes.
And there are so McDermott, I think that's his name. He drinks a lot.
Yes, that's right. He's got his flask.
There's certain looks that he gives Sarah that makes you think like he's kind of into Sarah. Okay. And I think there's an interesting sort of like kind of triangle actually between John, Sarah, and McDermott. Once her crazy boyfriend is out of the picture. Oh, yeah. John even says at one point, like when he's giving her his stump speech, which I'll talk about in a second, that, you know, we can start this thing over, you know. You, me, a couple others will make babies and start this thing over, right?
Oh, that's right. You're right. Yeah.
So that would be why I don't think.
No, you're 100%.
It goes quite that
100%
deep,
right,
Alex. But
I'm not the type of person to look into that type of relationship and just be like, because I'm not like a shipper or anything like that.
Yes, you are.
But there was just a couple moments where I was like, are these two in a relationship or not? Like I don't know. Like
I think it is a friendship where they genuinely care about each other, and like that's the thing.
Sure.
Like they start off the film, and you're kind of unsure about them, right?
Yes.
But then they end up becoming heroic, as McDermott even says at one point. It's like, it turns out we're heroes, right? Which is cool. But I wanted to speak thematically. It gets to that scene that I was just mentioning, but the film borders on nihilism with a twist, I believe. The film seems to be asking almost throughout, what is your purpose? What is each character's purpose? What's their reason for living? It's certainly existential in that sense. You've got Sarah, who has this purpose of trying to find a way out, to find a cure, to find an escape, to make a change, really, of some sort, to change others. Then you have John, who tells her that she is wasting her time, literally, because, quote, time is all we have. And that was in the stump speech, right? When he's telling her, like, you are wasting your time. What does this film decide? Ultimately, it leans towards John, right? In John's stump speech there, of course, because who ends up surviving? Well, it's John and Sarah and McDermott, who have created this family of sorts and will seemingly survive together on this island they've escaped to, embracing each other and the time that they have left, right? That's how it seems to me that the film ends, is in Sarah coming to that realization, right? This is what's in front of me is what's going to matter now.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's how I think about it. And it is interesting. It doesn't, I might be reading into it a little more than I should, but I think that is what the film is leaning into a bit.
It could be. It could be. I will say I had a little harder time picking up on what Romero was trying to say in here. Other than kind of like you said, time, and then people just investing their time. I guess into the wrong things, or maybe just not enjoying themselves, sinking themselves into things that ultimately may not matter. Now, her creating a cure would matter. But maybe I want to go over John a little bit more in our awards. Okay. I think
cool. Yeah, it's interesting, because you contrast Sarah with Frankenstein, that they call Logan, I think his name is, but Dr. Frankenstein, as they refer to him as. And Dr. Frankenstein is just a different type of scientist with a different type of purpose, right? He spends his time in a way that fascinates him. He's actually not really interested at all in finding a cure or really coming up with any long-term solutions.
No, he's having a blast.
Having a blast. And I love there's this moment where he's talking to Sarah and the other scientist. And he's like, he talks about how his dad told him he'd never become rich doing research. And then he kind of thinks to himself and he's like, become rich. Right. It's just this little moment where it's just funny, him reflecting back on like how meaningless that was when his dad was telling him that, and how he just enjoys research and it doesn't matter anyway, right? Like it could matter less because he enjoys it, right?
Yeah.
Which goes back to kind of purpose in a sense, which is interesting. But yeah, anything else to add, Alex?
No, I think that's it for me. I will say that character was very enjoyable for me, and I absolutely love that in every scene he has blood just all over him, and he's
just on his hands while he eats. He's like, "Are we having food at this thing?" With blood all over his hands.
he's so funny, and also like one of the most horrific characters in here, but like. He doesn't do anything to anyone alive. He just messes with dead bodies. So he doesn't like do anything evil, really. No. But he does like very taboo things.
That's what it is. It's taboo things, right? It's like nothing technically awful,
right?
Things that we would consider incredibly uncomfortable, right? But. Anyway,
because like he's feeding our buddy Bub human pieces, but he didn't kill them; they were already dead. So it's just taboo.
Exactly. I know. MVM Plus today, Alex. We'll get into a couple things. Last of Us. We started watching that. We'll talk about that. We'll talk a little bit about the Oscars that I didn't watch this year, Alex, at all. I think it's all.
Do you usually watch them at all?
Not really. I just kind of pay attention, but I've even paid attention less. So we'll talk about that. Probably get a little bit into our annual Oscars debate.
I had a feeling.
And we'll talk about anything else that you've been getting into recently, because there's always something.
Always something.
That's over at patreon.com/MVM pod.
All right.
But Alex.
Let's do it.
Compelling character. Who'd you have?
I had John. His little monologues like just completely captivated me. I just everything he said after he became more likable, and like honestly, it's the moment that we see him hanging out in this little paradise that he's created. I really connected with these two characters and kind of understood them a lot more. And so when he's giving that insight to Sarah about, maybe the cure isn't what she should be spending all of her time on, because she's not making any headway, and then that maybe it's not her business, which I'll get into with my That's a good line, or whatever it's called. What's it called?
Most memorable
the most memorable line award. I'll get into that.
It's fine, Alex. We've only done 186 of these.
Eric, what about you?
My most compelling character is Bub the Zombie. I love Bub the Zombie. He's awesome.
He's so good.
He's got the best moment. He's got the best moment in the film when he salutes Rhodes.
Oh, yeah.
Rhodes
he's getting torn apart.
About to die.
This is pretty funny.
Oh, man. It's pretty funny. Pretty great. I mean, you got a zombie that can shoot a gun, a zombie that has learned and is responsive, and might potentially be a bit caring, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he's sad when the doctor dies.
He does. He's
out for vengeance. This is a revenge story.
It feels like it. It is. This is a revenge story. It's Bub's revenge story. We're just living in it. So Bub is my compelling character.
Bub's good. I was surprised at how much I liked Bub. Like, it's such a gimmick. But it actually works really well in the movie.
So campy. It was great.
It is. What about your most memorable line award?
So it leads right from that into my most memorable line. It is right after Bub salutes Rhodes, and Rhodes starts getting eaten. And, of course, his intestines are getting eaten. And Rhodes just starts yelling, "Choke on him!" Like, even in his death, he is just like,
he's so spiteful.
So spiteful. It's amazing. What about you?
Mine comes from that monologue of John. When he's kind of maybe giving an explanation for what happened, because we find out that we find out him and McDermott are religious men, actually. But he's also explaining kind of what might be the logic for them on what happened. He says, "You want to put some kind of explanation down here before you leave? Here's one as good as any you're likely to find. We're being punished by the Creator. He visited a curse on us so that man could look at what hell was like. Maybe he didn't want to see us blow ourselves up, put a big hole in the sky. Maybe he just wanted to show us he's still the boss man. Maybe he figured we're getting too big for our britches, trying to figure his S out. Trying to figure his stuff out." I was like, I really like that. That little cap off right there, trying to figure his stuff out. You could tell it really hits home with Sarah. That she kind of buys it a little bit, it seems like. Like, maybe we have gone too far and we're focusing on the wrong things.
Yeah. No, I think you're right. That's really good. You chose the existential line this time, Alex. We kind of had role reversal for most memorable line. What about your Can't Believe That Acting award?
I'm going to give this to, actually, the good doctor. I don't know his name. What was his real name, Eric?
Are you talking about Dr. Frankenstein, Logan?
Yeah. Oh, Logan. That's what it was. Yes, Richard Liberty. He gets my Can't Believe That Acting award because of how fun he is and how goofy he is and how wonderfully disturbed he portrays his character, because everything he do is horrifying, but he is so excited about it. And he doesn't care to share it. He's like, "Oh yeah, look at this. I just severed this man's head." And actually, he didn't show them that. That was pretty horrifying. That was a cool effect, by the way.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
But he's like, "Oh yeah, look, this is General Peters or whatever." And it's just that brain stem sitting there, and he's so proud, like a kid at an art fair. It's so funny. What about you?
So you mentioned this character earlier. I don't like this character either. I think he's so over the top and terrible. Like, he's annoying. But, I mean, I'll tell you what. If this guy doesn't play him as the most annoying character, I don't know who else could, right? And it's Gary Howard Clark as Steele, right? Steele is our, biggest bully, knucklehead. He is... what's his name from Power Rangers, Alex? the big guy.
Oh, he's Bulk from Power Rangers.
Bulk
he's
from
like
Power
he's like Bulk and
Rangers.
Skull.
Yeah, that's those two characters. They're Bulk and Skull.
Oh, that makes sense.
He is Bulk. Yeah, he is Bulk in this movie. He's just a bully straight through. Not making rash decisions ever. And he is memorable for me in multiple ways. And really, like, the performance is exactly, I think, what Romero was wanting. So that's why I've got to give it to him.
Way to go, Gary Howard Clark. You devil, you.
What about your? Oh, that's a good shot,
Eric. I'm not sure if we have the same one. I don't. Oh no, we don't have the same one.
No,
mine's from the opening moments of the film, where she's in that dream. Which I don't know if the film needed the dream sequences, but this first one was so awesome. I do think I definitely wanted this first one, where she is in that room with just the calendar and she gets close to it, and then all of those arms come through the wall. Dude, it is horrifying. And I rewound it and watched it several times to see how they did it.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll tell you. I think I was reflecting on the dream sequences, actually, Alex, a little bit ago in our conversation. And I was just thinking about, because they're all focused on Sarah. Sarah's the only one that has them, right? Because she's the compass in this film. Right. She's how we're going to, she's our moral compass, but she's also, what's the film trying to say? It's trying to say something through Sarah, right? The message of the film comes through her, right? What ends up happening with her. And with Sarah, she has gotten to this point where she is completely overwhelmed and in this world of trying to find this cure. And like, that's all she can think about. She puts on this exterior that is unafraid and kind of tough and hard, right? Like her boyfriend tells her. Yeah. But in reality, she is afraid, right? She is frightened. She is overwhelmed. And those dream sequences kind of give us a glimpse into that. Even though they are quick and don't necessarily add a ton of narrative to the film itself.
Right, for sure.
That'd be my case for him, at least.
Yeah. No, I mean, I agree. I totally agree with that. And what I do like about her character, kind of like you said, like she has that hard, rough exterior initially, but by the end of the movie, man, she's an open book once all chaos breaks loose, which I really appreciate.
Nice. So that's a good shot, is the close-up zombie shot, which is like this point of view shot from a zombie's perspective as Rhodes is about to be taken by the zombies, right? It's this shot where we see hands. It was funny, your shot was kind of those hands coming out of the wall. Here, it's like the hands are coming out of the camera, right? From behind the camera, grabbing Rhodes, who's looking straight at the camera, right? At the end there. And I thought it was really clever. I really liked that. There were a couple shots to choose from, but that one stands out for sure.
Yeah. You're really honed in on this Rhodes finale scene. This thing really is captivating.
It's memorable. Yeah, it captivated me. I mean, he was just a scumbag.
Yeah, he was. He was the worst.
He was a bad dude. Unique award. I have my favorite zombie design award, Alex, which is, you mentioned this one, but I just think it's cool. And it's the like the spine with the brain zombie.
Oh, dude. It's so good.
It's still functioning, right? Still like, I guess it counts as a zombie.
It definitely counts as a zombie. Yeah, that thing's still alive.
It was funny. Yeah. It's just like that. Those things I thought were really funny. It was just more like the ripping apart of all the soldiers in the last fourth. I was like, it
is a lot.
This is a little over the top.
Yeah, this thing that's like has a pulsating spine and brain. That's not it. No, but I totally agree with you. I mean, it's very different. A man having his head pulled off.
It's like the scene. Oh yeah, you see the guy. He gets fingers stuck
In his
into
eyes.
his eyes, and then like as that's happening, like he starts getting ripped apart in multiple places, and then like his head is ripped off of his neck, and his head is ripped in half.
Yeah,
right.
A lot.
And it just has a continuous shot, which is impressive as crap.
It is.
Right?
It's so impressive. Yeah,
it's so impressive. But I'm just like, what is like? Wow. Intense. It is. What about you?
Mine is the My Name is Vengeance award. This goes to Bub. Man, this is like Liam Neeson before Liam Neeson was in Taken.
Ooh, this is John Wick.
Yeah, this is John Wick. Just a little slower paced John Wick, but with just as much revenge.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
Cool, man. Final thoughts and tiered rating. I can go ahead and start this one. As I said at the top, I think this fits great into the trilogy of films that we've gotten from Romero. I've become a Romero fan over the last two films. And Dawn of the Dead is a highlight of this series for me. I had so much fun with that movie. This movie I had a lot of fun with too. As I said, I was grotesquely entertained by what was happening on the screen. Even if this film made me start to desire that violence in a weird sort of way, it was entertaining in that sense. I don't think this film is quite as meaningful per se as the first two films. I think each film has kind of maybe had a little bit less to say, but Dawn of the Dead kind of hits that perfect sweet spot for me between like entertainment and trying to say something. This film might just lean a little too into the spectacle of it all, which I can appreciate and I can enjoy, and I did enjoy, but it doesn't quite reach the heights of the first two films in this series. So this is a Gamera tier film for me. Still middle to upper. I think the filmmaking is great, so it's still a middle to upper Gamera tier film for me. But that's where it lands. What about you?
Yeah. I'm a little different in you, because of just how I felt about the first Romero movie. But I'm with you. Like this trilogy has been great, and as I reflect on it, I'm just looking more and more fondly back at the movies. These three, because I looked at the filmography. I've actually seen two of his last three movies that he made, that he directed before he died. And, well, one of them's not great, but the other one is Land of the Dead. So, but seeing these, I mean, you really understand the influence Romero had and the vision that this man had in his career. And the influence, it's just very, very cool to see. And I really enjoyed Day of the Dead, much more so than I did Night of the Living Dead. So I think Dawn of the Dead is over this, for sure, just because of how a lot of that plays out and some of the commentary it has. Now, I will give this one some pretty big props. Romero, you didn't shove it down my throat. I mean, you shoved some of the characters down my throat, but you didn't shove your themes like just relentlessly in my face. Like you had faith in me to be able to pick up something in this and try to figure it out for myself. So thank you, Mr. Romero, for giving me a chance this time. So I'm gonna give this a Gamera tier. This is probably a middle Gamera tier, but definitely recommended zombie viewing, especially if you're looking for something a little different. This is definitely what I would send your way.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's interesting, Alex. Like, there are flaws in each of these three films.
Yeah.
And yet, when you look back at these three films, it's looking back with a strong sense of admiration. I think.
For sure.
Like in appreciation, you can appreciate what Romero has done, even if it's not your cup of tea. you can see the influence that he's had, and there's a quality in these films that you just don't get. You understand why people point to these films as kind of the post for zombie films and for horror films, right? People keep coming back to these ones. They're rewatchable. You can keep going back. Especially, I think the last two are the most rewatchable of the trilogy. So there's a lot to appreciate here with this Romero trilogy for sure.
100%.
Next week, Alex, we are moving into the 90s, but in order to know what 90s film we are going to watch next, you need to vote. Vote on our Patreon. Check our Patreon page out. It'll also be on our website. You can always check there. If you're listening to this episode, it always tells you what next week's film is at. That's mvmpod.com. You can go there and see what next week's film is, but we're still waiting on the results of our poll. So there are less to choose from in the 90s. And so we may just do one film from the 90s, Alex, and do another film from the 2000s, or maybe two films from the 2000s.
Backdate Sugar Hill. Sugar Hill. Bring it back.
Yeah, we might have to do MVM Plus content on Sugar Hill. That'd be fun. As always, thank you for listening to Monsters vs. Men. You can leave us feedback on this episode at mvmpod.com, which we just mentioned, or email us at mvmpod@gmail.com. You can become a bargain basemite at patreon.com/mvmpod and receive weekly bonus content. Monsters vs. Men is produced by Alex Cornett. Executive producers are Kevin Alexander, Faye Basier, John Freeman, and Michael Herndon. Special thanks to our wives, Rock Band for PlayStation 3, which forms Cell Block B, Louis Loops, Senior Honda, Drew the Collector, our Instagram connector, and you, as always, listener, for listening. Until next time, don't
let your bunker friends find out you've been feeding your old bunker friends to your new zombie bunker friend. Try to stay alive.
Mafia, wake up, wake up, wake up.
You have created a monster and it will destroy you.
He was eating good, though, Aaron. That's some good jerky.
Eating good in the neighborhood.